Joining me is the panel, Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal President, Stephen Conroy, former Labor Senator and Cabinet Minister. Michael, it's been a very messy start to the campaign for Daniel Andrews, and all about past issues, of course, but they do raise questions about his secrecy and can you trust him? How do you feel he's answering those questions?
Well, very badly, Andrew. This is what happens when you're an older government and you've wielded as much power as he has with as much secrecy as he has. And there's now, that they're losing ground in the polls every day is my sense. 8 years in office, Kennett lost after 7, Howard 11, Morrison 9. So as you approach that 10-year mark, governments the public starts to think this government's had too much time. He's still in front, but there is a culture of secrecy and cover-up in Victoria. And of course, worst of all for him is the whiff of corruption surrounding this government. He won't answer questions, and that makes voters extremely suspicious. And if there's one thing they'll vote against is if there is any corruption. Not saying there is, but there's a whiff of it through these IBAC investigations. And that's doing a lot of damage to Daniel Andrews, and he won't answer questions about it.
Steve Conroy, you might tell me, and you'd be right, that the massive debt that the Daniel Andrews racked up is a bigger story, or the pandemic lockdowns, which are unnecessary, still left Victorians with the highest death rate in the country. That might be a bigger issue, but still, how these ones are sexy topics, as it were. People do reach an opinion. They find them easy to follow and to understand. How damaging are these?
Well, I think the Herald Sun are engaged, unfortunately, in leading the Liberal Party and Michael Kroger down the same sort of dead-end streets that they led them down 4 years ago over red shirts, over the CFMEU's alleged influence, and, Sudanese crime gangs. So if the Herald Sun want to lead the Liberal Party down the rabbit hole, fantastic for Labor. There are substantive issues, points of difference between Matthew Guy and Daniel Andrews that actually deserve to be debated and on the front page of newspapers. But I repeat, if the Herald Sun wants to go down the irrelevant rabbit burrows that it currently appears to be going for the first week,
hang on, I've got to pull you up there. One of the irrelevance is a corruption inquiry. And another thing you dismissed as irrelevant was the red shirt scandal, which involved the theft of nearly $400,000 of taxpayers' money to pay for Labor so-called volunteers. That's hardly irrelevant to me. But Michael Kroger, Liberal insiders tell me Andrew's actually struggling in the north, and particularly northwest of Melbourne, newly built, new build areas there that supposedly safe Labor, but actually struggling with poor infrastructure like roads. What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, I think the coalition's a good chance in the seat like Melton, and this is part of the new dynamic, Andrew, the new paradigm in world politics, which is blue-collar, middle class, working families, mortgaged families are voting against the Labor Party now and are tending to vote for the Liberal Party. They're voting for the Republican Party. They're voting for the Conservative Party because they think they're aspirational and money matters to them, good government matters to them, debt matters to them. And they basically think that coalition governments, cultural issues, education matters to them, law and order, violence, policing. These are the middle class values that the Liberal Party tends to represent in our cohorts in other countries, as I said. And those people are tending to come to the coalition and away from Labor. So the western suburbs are very much the future of the Liberal Party. We will win a swathe of seats there in the decades ahead, and basically that will become Liberal Party territory, and we've got to reach out to them.
Michael, I have noted before.
I'm not saying this election. Melton is certainly a chance.
Steve Conroy, what are you hearing? How much trouble are you in?
Yeah, look, all of the polls, I think there's now 3 come out in the last few days just to kick off the campaign after a week. And all of them show is the Liberal Party's primary vote is either not moved or barely moved 1 to 2 points off the lowest base in many, many years. So the prospects of the Liberals losing seats to the Teals ultimately means there is zero chance that Matthew Guy will be the Premier of Victoria after the election. What is in the real mix right now is whether or not the Andrews government loses the 11 seats that it needs to be forced into minority government. And Michael Kroger is correct when he says there are seats that are at play that have not traditionally been at play, where there's criticisms of the Andrew government because it's claimed that it didn't deliver on some promises from 4 years ago in a seat like Melton around a hospital has been a very big issue out there for a long time. There's seats that Labor might lose to the Greens in Richmond, in Albert Park, Northcote. The seats that Labor could lose to the Teals,
that
like
would be
Hawthorn.
a problem.
And now you're seeing
it's interesting.
that
Labour,
it's beginning to move down that
pollster
pendulum.
is saying is backing off the Teals, Steve, backing off the Teals, taking sway. I don't know what it's based that on, but if Labor is in coalition with the Greens, policies include 1 or 2 empty prisons. I think they're in a bit of strife there long term. But a win is a win, I guess. Steve Conroy, Michael Kroger, thank you both so much for your time.